In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where countless civilizations thrived among stars and planets, there was one world no one dared to approach for long. Vera 7, a death world shrouded in mystery and danger, was infamous for its lethal environment. Its jungles teemed with carnivorous plants that could swallow an unwary traveler whole, while skies buzzed with winged predators capable of outrunning starships. Yet, despite its reputation as a living nightmare, the people of Vera 7 had carved out a life here, a hard, brutal existence shaped by survival. The Verans were not like other species. They didn't rely on machines or sleek technology. Instead, they mastered bioengineering, using their planet's deadly ecosystem to their advantage. Their tools were crafted from living organisms, their weapons grown rather than forged. To outsiders, they seemed primitive, almost feral. But those who dismissed them failed to see the brilliance behind their ways. For centuries, humanity and countless alien races ignored Vera 7, treating it as nothing more than a barren wasteland too dangerous to exploit. That changed when Nexera Mining Corporation, a greedy interstellar conglomerate, discovered something beneath Vera 7's surface, something worth risking everything for. Deep underground lay deposits of erythium crystals, rare minerals prized for powering advanced starship engines. Ignoring treaties and ethical concerns, Nexera sent fleets of mining ships to strip mine the planet, convinced the Verans wouldn't, or couldn't, fight back. At first, the Verans resisted quietly, sabotaging equipment and driving off workers with warnings disguised as attacks. But Nexera didn't listen. They saw the resistance as mere nuisances, easily crushed under superior firepower. As drilling operations intensified, strange tremors began shaking the ground. Plants mutated overnight, growing larger and more aggressive. Animals turned rabid, attacking anything near their territories. Even the air felt heavier, charged with an unnatural energy. Then came the day everything changed. Deep within the mines, workers unearthed something ancient, a pulsating mass of black tendrils oozing with acidic slime. It looked alive, yet unlike any life form anyone had ever seen. Before they could react, the creature lashed out, consuming flesh and metal alike. Within hours, entire mining camps were overrun. Survivors spoke of horrifying visions, bodies fused into grotesque hybrids, half human, half monster, their screams echoing through the jungle. Word reached Kayla Rin, a warrior chief known across Vera 7 for her strategic mind and unyielding determination. Standing tall at the edge of her village, she watched smoke rise from distant mountains where Nexera's operations once stood. Her sharp green eyes narrowed as she processed reports from scouts. "This isn't just another predator," she muttered to herself. "Something bigger is coming." Kayla knew what others refused to admit. This wasn't nature fighting back. It was something far worse. The parasite spreading across Vera 7 wasn't content staying confined to the mines. It consumed indiscriminately, adapting to every challenge thrown its way. Already it had begun infiltrating nearby villages, turning friends into enemies and families into prey. As night fell over Vera 7, Kayla called together her council of warriors. Around a flickering fire, faces painted with ash and symbols of defiance, they discussed their next move. Some argued for retreat, to abandon their homes and flee deeper into the wilderness. Others demanded vengeance, calling for raids against Nexera's remaining forces. But Kayla shook her head firmly. "We can't run," she said, her voice steady but fierce, "and we can't fight blindly either. This thing, whatever it is, it's smarter than us, stronger. If we let it leave this planet, no one will be safe, not even the stars themselves." Her words hung heavy in the air, chilling everyone present. For the first time in generations, the Verans faced a threat that threatened not only their survival but the fate of the entire galaxy. Little did they know, their decision to stand and fight would become legend, a story remembered by every species, forever etched into the annals of history. But for now, all they could do was prepare. Because tomorrow, the real battle would begin. The galaxy had always viewed Vera 7 as a distant curiosity, a death world too hostile to bother with. But when news of Nexura Mining Corporation's collapse spread, whispers of chaos reached the ears of the Galactic Concordance, a coalition of advanced species that governed interstellar affairs. The reports were fragmented and chaotic, describing monstrous creatures, devastated mining colonies, and strange occurrences that defied explanation. No one knew what was happening on Vera 7, but everyone agreed it couldn't be ignored. To investigate, the Concordance dispatched an envoy led by Counselor Taryn Lyre, a seasoned diplomat from the aquatic Xanthari species. Her mission was clear: assess the situation, establish communication with the Varans if possible, and determine whether military intervention would be necessary. Accompanying her were scientists, security personnel, and a small fleet of sleek, silver ships designed for reconnaissance. As the envoy approached Vera 7, their sensors picked up disturbing anomalies. Swaths of the planet glowed faintly green under infrared scans, suggesting widespread biological contamination. Communication attempts yielded only static-filled responses, growls, hisses, and unintelligible shouts in a language no translator could decipher. Undeterred, Taryn ordered her team to land near what remained of one of Nexura's mining outposts. What they found chilled even the most hardened among them. The outpost was a graveyard of twisted metal and fused flesh. Bodies, or what was left of them, lay scattered everywhere, some partially consumed, others grotesquely transformed into hybrid monstrosities. Trees writhed unnaturally, their branches moving like claws. Above, shadowy figures darted through the dense canopy, watching silently. Taryn stepped cautiously onto the cracked earth, flanked by armed guards. She raised her hands in a gesture of peace, hoping to signal her non-hostile intent. Moments later, a group of Varan warriors emerged from the jungle, their bodies painted with war markings and their weapons glowing faintly, an eerie fusion of technology and biology. At their center stood Kayla Rin, her piercing gaze locking onto Taryn. "Who are you?" Kayla demanded, her voice sharp and commanding. "Why have you come here?" Taryn activated her universal translator, which struggled to keep up with the guttural tones of the Varan language. "We mean no harm," she replied calmly. "We represent the Galactic Concordance. We've come to understand what's happening here." Kayla's expression darkened. "You're too late," she spat. "Your kind already brought this upon us. Leave now, or face the consequences." Before Taryn could respond, one of her guards misinterpreted Kayla's tone as aggression. Fearing an imminent attack, he fired a stun blast toward the Varans. The shot missed its mark but struck a nearby tree, causing it to convulse violently before collapsing into a heap of wriggling tendrils. Panic erupted. The Varans retaliated instantly, unleashing a barrage of bioweapons that disintegrated two of the envoy's ships within seconds. Chaos ensued. Taryn screamed orders to retreat, but confusion reigned supreme. More blasts lit up the sky as the remaining ships tried to flee. Kayla watched grimly as the invaders scrambled to escape, knowing full well they'd return with greater force. To her, this wasn't diplomacy. It was yet another act of arrogance by outsiders who refused to listen. By the time the last ship limped away from Vera 7, the damage was done. Casualties were high on both sides, though the Varans suffered far less thanks to their intimate knowledge of the terrain. Back aboard her flagship, Taryn reviewed footage of the skirmish, her gills flaring in frustration. The Varans weren't just primitive. They were skilled fighters with weapons unlike anything she'd ever seen. Worse still, the parasite's influence appeared to be growing stronger, spreading faster than anyone anticipated. When word of the failed mission reached the Galactic Concordance, reactions varied wildly. Some called for immediate retaliation, labeling the Varans as savages who needed to be exterminated. Others argued for caution, pointing out the unknown nature of the threat lurking on Vera 7. Debates raged across council chambers, but one thing became painfully clear. First contact had gone horribly wrong. And deep within the jungles of Vera 7, Kayla prepared her people for what was to come. She knew the galaxy wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. But she also knew something else. The Varens had survived worse. And this time, they wouldn't go down without a fight. The jungle burned with unnatural fire as Kayla Rin returned to her village, her mind racing with the events of the day. The failed encounter with the galactic concordances and Voy had left her people shaken but resolute. Word of the skirmish spread quickly among the tribes, and soon leaders from across Vera 7 gathered under the shadow of a massive, ancient tree. The same tree where countless generations had convened during times of crisis. Kayla stood at the center of the clearing, her presence commanding silence. Around her, warriors, elders, and bioengineers exchanged uneasy glances. Some clutched weapons forged from living organisms, their surfaces pulsing faintly in rhythm with their owners' heartbeats. Others carried samples of mutated plants and animals, grim reminders of the parasite's relentless advance. The air was thick with tension, but also determination. They all knew this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about stopping something far greater than themselves. "We've been pushed to the brink before," Kayla began, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "But this is different. This thing they unleashed isn't content staying here. It will spread to our skies, to other planets, to the stars themselves. If we don't act now, it won't just destroy us. It will consume everything." Her words hung heavy in the humid air. A few nodded in agreement, but skepticism lingered on many faces. One elder stepped forward, a wiry man named Jorak, his skin scarred from years of battling predators. "And what do you propose, Kayla?" he asked, folding his arms. "We can't fight starships or armies. We're warriors, not gods." Kayla met his gaze without flinching. "No, we're not gods," she admitted, "but we are survivors. And sometimes survival means taking risks no one else would dare." She gestured toward a group of bioengineers standing nearby. "Our ancestors taught us how to bend nature to our will. Now it's time we use those lessons, not just to defend ourselves, but to strike back." She turned to address the crowd. "The invaders think we're primitive. That we'll cower in fear while they decide our fate. But what if we show them otherwise? What if we take the fight to them?" Murmurs rippled through the gathering. The idea was bold, perhaps even reckless, but it sparked a flicker of hope. For decades, the Varens had fought defensively, protecting their land from outsiders who saw them as expendable. But now, Kayla offered something new, a chance to rewrite the narrative. One of the bioengineers, a young woman named Tara, stepped forward hesitantly. In her hands, she held a glowing orb, a fragment of technology salvaged from the wreckage of Nexara's mining ships. "We've been studying their tech," she said softly, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "If we combine it with our own methods, we might be able to create something bigger, something that could get us off this planet." The suggestion ignited a flurry of debate. Some argued it was impossible. Others saw potential. Kayla listened intently, weighing every opinion. Finally, she raised her hand for silence. "It won't be easy," she acknowledged. "But I believe we can do this, together." Over the next several days, the tribes worked tirelessly to prepare. Bioengineers fused alien alloys with organic materials, crafting hybrid components unlike anything seen before. Warriors trained relentlessly, honing their skills against simulated enemies modeled after the Concordance's forces. Meanwhile, scouts monitored the parasite's movements, ensuring the growing threat wouldn't catch them off guard. As the pieces came together, Kayla felt a strange mix of dread and resolve. Leaving Vera 7 meant venturing into the unknown, a realm dominated by species who viewed her people as little more than beasts. Yet staying behind meant accepting defeat, allowing the parasite to escape unchecked. For better or worse, the decision had been made. On the eve of their departure, Kayla stood alone beneath the ancient tree, staring up at the stars. Somewhere beyond those distant lights lay answers, and perhaps allies. But there was no guarantee of success. Only one thing was certain. When the Varens stopped playing nice, the galaxy would never forget them. The night was alive with the hum of bioluminescent creatures and the distant calls of unseen predators. Beneath a canopy of glowing vines, Kayla Rin stood before her crew, her expression unreadable, but her eyes blazing with purpose. Behind her loomed their creation, a hybrid starship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its sleek, jagged frame combined scavenged alien tech with living organisms native to Vera 7. The hull pulsed faintly, as though it breathed, while tendrils of bioluminescence snaked across its surface like veins. "We've never done this before," Kayla said, addressing the small group gathered around her. "But if we don't try, everything we love will be lost." Her voice carried both determination and a quiet undercurrent of fear. This mission wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that the Varens weren't savages to be ignored or exterminated. They were survivors, innovators, fighters. Her team consisted of 12 individuals, each chosen for their unique skills. Among them were Tyra, the brilliant bioengineer who had helped design the ship; Darren, a grizzled warrior with unmatched combat instincts; and Corin, a tracker whose connection to Vera 7's ecosystem seemed almost supernatural. Each member understood the stakes. If they failed, not only would Vera 7 fall, but the parasite would spread unchecked through the stars. The ship, dubbed the Thorn, was powered by a symbiotic organism grown from Veran bioengineering techniques. Instead of relying on conventional fuel, the Thorn fed on ambient energy harvested from space itself. It was slow compared to Concordance vessels, but it was resilient, capable of repairing itself in ways no machine could replicate. For the first time in history, the Varens were leaving their planet, and Kayla intended to make sure the galaxy remembered their arrival. As the Thorn ascended into orbit, the crew marveled at the view below. Vera 7 looked both beautiful and terrifying from above, its jungles glowing faintly against the darkness. But there was no time for awe. Their destination lay ahead. A nearby space station orbiting a gas giant, a hub for traders, diplomats, and mercenaries alike. It was humanity's closest outpost to Vera 7, making it the perfect place to start spreading the truth about the parasite. When the Thorn docked, chaos erupted. Alarms blared as station security scrambled to respond to the unidentified vessel. Panic rippled through the corridors when word spread of its strange, organic appearance. Station Commander Jarek Halen, a burly human with a reputation for pragmatism, arrived at the docking bay flanked by armed guards. His face hardened when he saw Kayla step off the ship, followed by her crew. "What is this?" Jarek demanded, his hand resting on the hilt of his sidearm. "Who are you, and why have you brought whatever this thing is here?" Kayla raised her hand slowly, signaling peace. "My name is Kayla Rin," she replied, meeting his gaze without hesitation. "We're from Vera 7. We've come to warn you." "Warn us?" Jarek scoffed. "About what?" "That you're hostile primitives dragging some kind of monster ship into civilized space." Before Kayla could respond, one of the guards fired a stun blast toward Darren, mistaking his movement for aggression. The shot missed, striking the wall instead. But the reaction was immediate. Darren growled, drawing a weapon made of fused bone and crystal. Tensions escalated as both sides prepared for conflict. "Enough," Kayla shouted, stepping between them. She turned back to Jarek, her tone sharp. "If you want to kill us, fine. But know this, if you don't listen, everyone here dies. There's something coming, something worse than any war you've ever fought." Reluctantly, Jarek ordered his men to stand down. He agreed to hear Kayla out, but only after confiscating their weapons. As they were escorted to an interrogation room, Kayla exchanged a glance with her crew. This was their chance to prove themselves, to show the galaxy that the Varens weren't just victims. They were warriors, survivors, and now messengers of doom. For the first time in centuries, the people of Vera 7 had stepped beyond their planet, and they weren't going to let anyone silence them. not even the galaxy itself. The interrogation room aboard the space station was cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the organic warmth of the Thorn. Kayla sat at the center of a metallic table, her hands resting calmly on its surface despite the dozen armed guards surrounding her. Across from her, Commander Jarek Halen leaned forward, his brow furrowed as he studied her with equal parts suspicion and curiosity. "You say there's some kind of parasite?" Jarek asked, his tone dripping with skepticism. "That it's spreading. And you expect me to believe that?" Kayla didn't flinch. She reached into a pouch strapped to her belt and pulled out a small vial containing a writhing black tendril, the remains of one of the parasite's victims. "This isn't a story," she said firmly, sliding the vial toward him. "It's real. It's alive. And if you don't act now, it'll come for you next." Jarek hesitated, then activated a containment field around the vial. The tendril thrashed violently before dissolving into ash, leaving behind only a faint acidic residue. His expression shifted slightly. Not fear, but unease. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. While Kayla negotiated with Jarek, the rest of her crew navigated the station, gathering intelligence and searching for allies. Tira wandered through bustling marketplaces, filled with traders haggling over rare goods. Merchants sneered at her appearance, dismissing her as another savage from Vera 7, until she began offering samples of bioengineered materials scavenged from their ship. Her innovations caught the attention of Zithari nomads, a species displaced by colonial expansion. Intrigued by her work, they introduced her to their leader, Saren Vex, a sharp-eyed woman who saw potential in the Varan's plight. "They think we're worthless," Saren said bitterly, gesturing toward the Concordance envoys patrolling the station. "But maybe together, we can make them see differently." Meanwhile, Corin ventured into darker corners of the station, where mercenaries and outcasts gathered. There, he found Reinar Zax, a disgraced scientist exiled for unethical experiments. Reinar had been part of the team that initially discovered the parasite during Nexura's mining operations. Haunted by guilt, he offered vital information about the organism's weaknesses and its horrifying ability to adapt. Back in the interrogation room, Kayla pressed her case further. Using footage recorded by her scouts, she showed Jarek images of infected worlds and mutated creatures. "Your people caused this," she said bluntly. "If you won't help us stop it, then you're no better than Nexura." Her words struck a nerve. Word of the meeting spread quickly, reaching factions within the station who harbored resentment toward the Galactic Concordance. Among them were members of the Orcs Collective, rogue scientists seeking redemption after creating dangerous technologies. They approached Kayla cautiously, offering their expertise in exchange for protection. As alliances formed, tensions mounted elsewhere. Some factions viewed the Varans as a threat, advocating for their immediate removal. Others argued that helping them could destabilize the fragile peace maintained by the Concordance. Debates erupted in crowded halls, drawing crowds of curious onlookers. Through it all, Kayla remained steadfast, rallying those who shared her vision. By the end of the day, an unlikely coalition emerged. Calling themselves the Fractured Stars Alliance, they united under a single goal: to stop the parasite before it consumed everything. Each faction brought unique strengths: Zithari mobility, Oryx knowledge, and Varan resilience. Together, they crafted a plan to expose Nexura's crimes and rally support across the galaxy. As Kayla addressed her newfound allies, she felt a spark of hope amidst the chaos. For so long, the Varans had fought alone, but now they stood alongside others who understood what it meant to be cast aside, ignored, or exploited. The parasite may have awakened something ancient and deadly, but it had also ignited a fire among the forgotten. And when the Fractured Stars Alliance prepared to leave the station, Kayla knew one thing for certain: the galaxy would never underestimate the Deathworlders again. The Fractured Stars Alliance moved quickly, their makeshift fleet weaving through the stars like a swarm of defiant fireflies. Kayla stood on the bridge of the Thorn, her eyes fixed on the holographic map projected before her. Red markers pulsed ominously across several systems, infected planets where the parasite had taken root. Each marker represented not just loss of life, but entire ecosystems rewritten into nightmarish versions of themselves. Back on Vera 7, reports from scouts painted an even grimmer picture. The parasite was evolving faster than anyone anticipated. Its tendrils stretched farther, consuming everything in its path and leaving behind grotesque hybrids that were neither fully plant, animal, nor machine. Entire villages had vanished overnight, replaced by pulsating masses of black ooze that radiated heat and death. Even the air felt heavier, charged with an unnatural energy that made breathing difficult. Kayla clenched her fists as she listened to updates from Terra, who monitored data streams from drones sent to infected areas. "It's adapting," Terra said grimly, her voice trembling slightly. "Every time we think we've found a way to contain it, it changes. It's learning." But the worst news came when Corin intercepted fragmented transmissions from nearby colonies. Worlds once thriving with life were now silent tombs. Ships attempting rescue missions returned empty, or worse, didn't return at all. Survivors spoke of cities overrun by writhing vines and skies filled with winged abominations. The parasite wasn't just spreading, it was accelerating, feeding off every resource it touched. As fear gripped the galaxy, governments scrambled to respond. Quarantine zones were established around infected planets, enforced by heavily armed patrols. Trade routes shut down, plunging economies into chaos. Riots broke out on overcrowded stations as supplies dwindled and panic spread. Rumors of doomsday weapons and secret protocols leaked into public discourse, fueling paranoia and distrust. On board the Thorn, tensions ran high. The coalition worked tirelessly to expose Nexera's role in unleashing the parasite, broadcasting damning evidence to anyone willing to listen. Holographic feeds showed corporate executives laughing over profit margins while ignoring warnings about the dangers beneath Vera 7's surface. The revelation sparked outrage, but also division. Some called for immediate action against Nexera, while others argued that focusing on revenge would only delay efforts to stop the parasite. Kayla refused to let infighting derail their mission. She gathered her team in the ship's central chamber, where glowing fungi cast soft light across their faces. "We don't have time for this," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the heated arguments. "Every second we waste arguing is another planet lost, another species wiped out." Her words silenced the room. Darren, ever loyal, nodded in agreement. "She's right," he growled. "If we're going to save anyone, we need to focus on what matters, stopping that thing." With renewed resolve, the Alliance launched a multi-front campaign. Zithari ships provided reconnaissance, slipping past blockades to gather intelligence on infected worlds. Orcs scientists analyzed samples of the parasite, searching for vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Veran warriors prepared for ground assaults, knowing full well the horrors they'd face. Their first target was Erithos Prime, a mining colony ravaged by the parasite. As the Thorn descended through the planet's atmosphere, the crew braced themselves for what awaited below. Thick clouds of spores choked the air, forcing them to rely on biofilters built into their suits. The landscape below was unrecognizable, once bustling settlements reduced to skeletal ruins entangled in pulsating vines. Kayla led the charge, her weapon humming with energy as she stepped onto alien soil. Around her, tendrils twitched and recoiled, sensing intruders. But there was no turning back now. With every step, she reminded herself why they fought, not just for Vera 7, but for every world threatened by the parasite's insatiable hunger. For the first time, the galaxy saw the Deathworlders not as savages, but as protectors. And though the battle ahead seemed impossible, one truth became clear: if anyone could stop the parasite, it was them. The battle on Erithos Prime was a blur of chaos and carnage. Kayla moved with precision, her weapon slicing through writhing tendrils that lashed out like living whips. The parasite had transformed the planet into a labyrinth of horrors. Twisted ruins entangled in pulsating vines, skies choked with spore clouds, and grotesque hybrids lurking in every shadow. Her team fought valiantly, but even their combined strength struggled against the relentless tide of corruption. As they pushed deeper into the colony's ruins, Kayla couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. Every movement seemed deliberate, as if the parasite itself was aware of their presence. Then it happened. A deafening roar echoed through the desolate streets, followed by the emergence of a towering monstrosity. Its body was a grotesque fusion of organic matter and metallic debris, its eyes glowing with an unnatural intelligence. "This isn't just another hybrid," Tara shouted over the comlink, her voice trembling. "It's directing them. It's controlling everything." Kayla gritted her teeth. They had no choice but to retreat or risk being overwhelmed. But before she could issue the order, reinforcements arrived. Ships from the Fractured Stars Alliance descended from orbit, unleashing salvos of bioengineered projectiles designed to neutralize the parasite's growth. The creature roared in fury, retreating into the depths of the ruins as the Alliance regrouped. Back aboard the Thorn, Kayla reviewed data collected during the skirmish. It confirmed what Tira suspected. The parasite wasn't mindless. It operated under a central consciousness, an ancient hive mind buried deep within Erythos Prime's core. Destroying it would cripple the organism's ability to spread further. But reaching the core wouldn't be easy. Intelligence suggested Nexura Mining Corporation had constructed secret facilities around the site, likely still guarded by automated defenses. Worse, fragments of the parasite had already begun hitching rides on passing comets and asteroids, spreading to other systems. Time was running out. Determined to strike at the heart of the problem, Kayla devised a daring plan: infiltrate Nexura's headquarters and uncover whatever secrets remained about the parasite's origins. She knew it was risky. If captured, she'd be branded a terrorist. But the stakes were too high for hesitation. Under cover of darkness, Kayla and a small squad slipped past Nexura's security drones, using cloaking devices crafted by Orcs scientists. Inside, they found evidence of unspeakable experiments, logs detailing how Nexura had deliberately cultivated the parasite, hoping to weaponize it. But the deeper they went, the more dangerous it became. Automated turrets fired indiscriminately, forcing them to rely on stealth and quick thinking. Their progress came to a halt when they reached the central vault. There, Kayla discovered something chilling: blueprints for Eclipse Protocol, a doomsday weapon capable of sterilizing entire planets. Nexura had planned to use it as a contingency measure, to destroy Vera 7 entirely if the parasite ever escaped containment. Before she could escape, alarms blared. Reinforcements poured into the facility, cornering her team. Betrayed by one of their own, a mercenary bribed by Nexura operatives, Kayla was captured and dragged before the corporation's CEO, Counselor Malric, a cold-eyed man who sneered at her defiance. "You think you're the hero of this story," Malric spat, circling her like prey. "You're nothing but a savage playing at politics. Your people are already dead. You just don't know it yet." Kayla refused to break. Instead, she met his gaze with steely resolve. "If we die, we'll take you with us," she said quietly, her voice carrying a promise he couldn't ignore. Malric ordered her detained, subjecting her to psychological torture in an attempt to extract information. But Kayla endured, drawing strength from memories of Vera 7 and the faces of those counting on her. When she learned of Nexura's plan to deploy Eclipse Protocol on her homeworld, she vowed to stop them, even if it cost her life. For days, she bided her time, waiting for an opportunity. And when it came, she seized it with everything she had. Using a hidden blade smuggled into her cell, she freed herself and triggered a diversion that allowed her allies to rescue her. As they fled the burning facility, Kayla looked back at the destruction they left behind, not with regret, but determination. The parasite may have started as a mistake, but now it was a war, one Kayla intended to win. no matter the cost. Kayla's escape from Nexora's headquarters was nothing short of miraculous. With flames licking at the facility's walls and alarms blaring in chaotic symphony, she led her team through collapsing corridors, dodging automated defenses and pursuing guards. Each step felt like a gamble with death itself. But Kayla moved with singular focus. She carried more than just survival on her shoulders. She carried proof of Nexora's crimes, data chips containing damning evidence that could turn the tide of public opinion against the corporation. When they finally reached the Thorn, battered but alive, Kayla wasted no time. She broadcasted the stolen files to every communication channel available, ensuring the galaxy witnessed the truth. Holographic feeds showed Nexora executives laughing over profit margins while ignoring warnings about the parasite's dangers. Logs revealed their deliberate experiments to weaponize the organism, treating it as little more than a tool for domination. The revelation ignited outrage across civilizations, sparking protests outside corporate strongholds and demands for accountability. Public pressure forced the Galactic Concordance into action. For the first time, the Varans were seen not as savages or threats, but as victims of exploitation. Ships from multiple factions joined the Fractured Stars Alliance, bolstering their numbers and resources. Scientists worked around the clock to analyze the parasite's biology, searching for weaknesses. Meanwhile, Kayla devised a bold plan: lure the parasite's core consciousness into a trap using a bioengineered virus designed to neutralize it. The final battle would take place on Vera 7, where the parasite had grown to unimaginable proportions. Its tendrils now stretched miles wide, consuming entire ecosystems and reshaping the planet into a nightmarish hellscape. The air was thick with spores, making breathing nearly impossible without specialized filters. Shadows moved constantly, hinting at horrors lurking just out of sight. Kayla stood before her warriors one last time, addressing them under the dim glow of bioluminescent fungi. "This ends here," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. "We've fought for our homes, our families, and our future. Now we fight for everyone, for every star, every world, every life that depends on us." Her words resonated deeply. Warriors painted their faces with symbols of defiance, sharpened their weapons, and prepared to face whatever awaited them. The coalition launched its assault, targeting key nodes of the parasite's network to weaken its grip before confronting the central hive mind. The journey to the heart of the infestation was harrowing. Every step brought new horrors, hybrids twisted beyond recognition, landscapes writhing with unnatural movement, and traps set by the parasite's intelligence. Casualties mounted, but Kayla refused to falter. Alongside her were Darren, Tira, Corin, and others who had become family in this war. Together, they pushed forward, driven by hope and desperation. Finally, they reached the core, a pulsating mass of black tendrils larger than any structure they'd ever seen. It pulsed rhythmically, as if alive, radiating waves of energy that made their skin crawl. This was it, the source of everything. Activating the bioengineered virus required manual intervention, meaning someone had to stay behind to ensure its success. Without hesitation, Kayla volunteered. Her crew protested, but she silenced them with a fierce glare. "You've done enough," she said softly. "Now let me do my part." As the virus began spreading, Kayla faced the parasite alone. Memories of her people, her planet, and all they had fought for flooded her mind. She whispered a prayer to the stars, knowing her sacrifice would save countless lives. Outside, explosions lit up the sky as the parasite's hold weakened. The galaxy watched in awe as the Deathworlders proved themselves not as monsters, but as heroes. And though Kayla's fate remained unknown, her legend lived on, a beacon of hope in the darkest times. The core of the parasite pulsed violently, its tendrils writhing like serpents caught in a death throes. Kayla stood at the center of the chaos, her body trembling not from fear, but from the sheer force of the organism's rage. The bioengineered virus she had unleashed was working, but slowly. Every second felt like an eternity as the parasite fought back, lashing out with waves of acidic energy that scorched the air around her. Kayla clutched the activation device tightly, her knuckles white against the faint green glow of the bioluminescent fungi embedded in its surface. She knew what she had to do. The virus required sustained proximity to fully integrate into the parasite's biology, something only she could ensure. Her team had retreated moments earlier, their protests ringing in her ears even now. Darren had shouted her name, his voice breaking with desperation. Tira had begged her to reconsider, tears streaming down her face. But Kayla had made her choice. "You've done enough," she told them firmly, meeting each of their gazes one last time. "Now let me finish this." As the virus spread, tendrils began dissolving into ash, collapsing inward as if consumed by invisible flames. But the process wasn't fast enough. The parasite's consciousness, its hive mind, was fighting back, channeling all its remaining strength into a final desperate assault. A massive tendril lunged toward Kayla, forcing her to dive aside just in time. Acidic slime splattered across the ground where she'd been standing, sizzling and smoking. Her breathing grew heavier, her muscles screaming for rest. Yet she pressed on, moving closer to the pulsating mass at the heart of the chamber. Each step brought new challenges. Hybrid creatures spawned from the parasite's dying spasms emerged from the shadows, snarling and clawing at her. Kayla fought them off with grim determination, her weapon glowing brighter with every strike. Blood trickled down her arm from a gash inflicted by one of the hybrids, but she ignored the pain, focusing solely on the task ahead. Finally, she reached the central node, a grotesque amalgamation of organic matter and alien tech. It pulsed erratically, its surface oozing black ichor that smelled of decay. Kayla activated the final sequence of the virus, jamming the device directly into the pulsating mass. An ear-splitting screech filled the chamber as the parasite's consciousness realized what was happening. Tendrils whipped wildly, trying to dislodge the device, but Kayla held firm, pouring every ounce of her willpower into keeping it in place. "Not today," she growled through gritted teeth, her voice barely audible over the cacophony. "You won't win." The parasite's resistance intensified, sending shockwaves through the chamber that threatened to tear her apart. But then something shifted. The pulsing slowed, the tendrils began to stiffen, and the screeching faded into a low, mournful hum. The virus was winning. Outside, the coalition watched anxiously as the parasite's hold on Vera 7 weakened. Tendrils collapsed into ash, hybrid creatures dissolved into pools of black goo, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly. Cheers erupted among the warriors, but they were tempered by sorrow. None of them wanted to believe Kayla wouldn't return. Inside the core chamber, Kayla staggered backward as the parasite's form imploded, collapsing inward until nothing remained but a faint residue coating the walls. Exhausted, she sank to her knees, clutching the activation device tightly. Her vision blurred, and her body ached, but she allowed herself a small smile. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd stopped the parasite. But there was no time for celebration. Structural supports groaned ominously overhead, signaling imminent collapse. Kayla tried to stand, but her legs refused to cooperate. She glanced at the exit, knowing she wouldn't make it in time. Instead, she activated her comm link one last time. "To my family," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "To everyone who believed in us, we did it. Take care of each other." Her words echoed across the galaxy, reaching her crew aboard the Thorn and beyond. Tears flowed freely as they listened, realizing the cost of their victory. Moments later, the chamber collapsed, burying Kayla beneath tons of debris. Silence fell over Vera 7, or what was left of it. The parasite was gone, but so was the woman who had sacrificed everything to stop it. As the galaxy mourned her loss, whispers of hope began to spread. Kayla Rin's bravery had changed the course of history, proving that even the smallest voices could roar when united. And though no one saw her again, some swore they felt her presence in the rustling leaves, or the distant call of predators. For the people of Vera 7, she became more than a hero. She became legend.